Well, I understand.
Yeah,
I'm done.
yeah. Like that literally for
Yeah, 5
5
minutes.
seconds.
Well, I understand.
Yeah,
I'm done.
yeah. Yeah, I had it. So, yeah, this one was, like that literally for
Yeah, 5
5
minutes.
seconds.
Well, I understand.
Yeah,
I'm done.
yeah. Yeah, I had it. So, yeah.
All right, we're gonna call this board of directors meeting to order at 7:04
Well, I
PM.
understand.
Board has land acknowledgement and anti-racism statement posted on its website.
Yeah, I had it. So, yeah.
All right, we're gonna call this board of directors while you got lunch at 7:04 PM. Board has land acknowledgement and anti-racism statement posted on its website. All right, we're gonna call this board. I think the host's microphone maybe. There we go. Okay. All right, roll call tonight. Let's see here. We got new people, new faces. So I believe Brian is coming in on the telephone, I think. And we're missing, or we don't have an ACC chair. Oh, Keith is on Zoom. Could you send Brian a link? All right. Nice. Yeah. So Brian and Keith are going to be joining on Zoom. All right, move on to adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So, you have to borrow them, pass the mic. to be heard on Zoom.
I can kind of help maybe just announce it too.
Okay, I move we adopt the agenda.
All right,
Second.
All right, Nancy, move to adopt the agenda. Sam seconded. All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Move on to the consent agenda. I sent a couple minor corrections a little while ago today when I was looking at them. Does anybody else have any other edits, Linda?
I have corrections for the 27th and the 3rd. So can we just hold them and then do them next time?
Yeah, we can do that. All right, we're just gonna hold the consent agenda and repeat it next meeting. Moving on to announcements. Does anybody have any announcements?
I just want to remind everyone that all of the committees are looking for volunteers. So if you're interested, make sure to go to the suddenvalley.com website and click on the volunteer link and submit your application.
Any other announcements? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to property owner comments. If you'd like to speak, please form a line at the podium.
Oh, I'm Steve Teskey, 28 Jubilee Lane. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations to all the new board members. Secondly, to the entire board, good luck in the coming year. It's going to be a lot of work, and look forward to seeing some progress and some good work. I really wanted to point out that in the past, I've been concerned about just exactly how transparent the board's activities have been. And some cases it was okay, some cases it was not. So hopefully this coming year, we'll see an improvement. I remember when 4Forward ran on transparency as one of their main objectives. And frankly, I didn't see a whole lot of that. I didn't see enough. Saw some of it, but not enough. So that's a challenge. And hopefully you folks will meet it and we'll move on together. Thank you.
We have one person on Zoom. One moment, please.
AJ, can you hear me?
Go ahead, Mitch.
All right. AJ, first off, I'll follow with Steve. New board, new year, new opportunity. And I hope that it's a very productive and successful year. Now, with that, I would like to start off with, I want to have a conversation on a perceived conflict of interest. And that has to do with our most recent election. If the numbers posted are correct.
The Zoom isn't coming through for some reason.
Can you hear me? Are we together on that?
I can hear you, Mitch, but I'm on Zoom as well. I don't know if they can hear.
Thanks, Keith. Yeah. I don't know. Until they can acknowledge.
All right, Mitch, you should be able to go. I think you're able to be heard now.
Here we go, AJ. So again, if you didn't hear the first, new board, new year, new opportunity. I hope it's a very successful year, right? I really do. I would like to start the conversation I'm going to have on a perceived conflict of interest, and this had to do with the recent election. If the numbers posted are correct, that there are some 76 ballots not counted, the bylaws clearly state that ballots must be received by the day before the election to be valid. And I don't believe that NNE or Unelect has the authority to change the bylaw policy or invalidate ballots that missed a postmark, unless they missed a postmark date. All right, so that's a concern to me. And the other is that Nancy admitted that she was walking around carrying blank ballots. Now, least of all, the bylaws for this specific case clearly state no person running for office can be involved in any activities related to the election for counting or being in the counting room. And so being involved, carrying blanks, being in the counting room, being involved is a complete disregard to the bylaws. They clearly, for this reason, so there's not a tinge of conflict of interest, say, if you're running for office, stay out, don't get involved in counting. And Nancy has been involved through this process It's been a public debacle to watch all the way through. Now, if this board wants to talk about putting in new controls on speaking, I think the board should have a first conversation about will it comply with the existing bylaws to begin with? And thank you very much. I do hope that it's a successful year for the board. Thank you.
Okay, Carla, you should be able to speak.
Okay, I just have a comment. I've listened to and been involved with the Sudden Valley Board meetings now for 7 years, and the word transparency has never been defined. It's much like diversity, and as much as I don't, well, let's just say diversity means something different to almost everybody, as does transparency. So I guess I don't know what you can do about that, but in my observation, there's been a lot more revealed about how the board works and how the association works in the 7 years. There's been a progression in the 7 years that I've been here. So when people throw around words like transparency, perhaps they could say what it is specifically they're looking for. That's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Carla. Thank you, Carla. Looks like we have one more, Joanne. Go ahead, Gail, you can talk now. Gail, you need to unmute yourself. I need you to, Gail, you need to unmute yourself. Yeah. All right, I'm not sure it's working, Gail. So I think we might just move on. I apologize for the inconvenience. All right, I think that's the end of property owner comments then. If you'd like, you can always email the board to Gail. All right, we're gonna move on to the general manager's report next.
Good evening, everyone. Pardon my out of breathness. The running back and forth is taking a toll. On Saturday, I shared a presentation that detailed some highlights from each of our operating departments. That presentation will be posted to the website, and I would encourage everyone to take a look at it. And that stands as my update to the community for this meeting.
All right, we'll be moving on to new business then. The first order is certification of the 2022 AGM. And so I'll pass it over to Director Wadsworth.
Okay, we put in all the information that we had and submitted it, and it should all be in this packet. There was a couple errors in our terminology, apparently. And it talked about ballots, the summary of ballots mailed, ballots cast, and ballots not counted. It says 76 returned to Unilec late. That should say received late. They were postmarked from the third. There was one that came from Canada was mailed on the 25th, and the rest were postmarked the 31st to the 4th. And I got an email today from Unilec, from Catherine at Unilec, and she said they did clean out the box on Friday at the end of the day, and then went and got their plane, and they didn't get up here till after midnight, and because they wanted to stay and make sure the box was cleaned out. So those 76 late arrival ballots were ineligible because they were received after the end of business day on Friday the 4th. And in the little packet in here also, I wrote a kind of a comments of everything about different problems that we saw, little things that happened that created some glitches in this. Where'd my page go? At any rate, it says about, and it does say in here about late ballots also in there, and it talks about Unilec by their cutoff of November 3rd. That should say November 4th. And the October 25th date was a suggestion so that it could get here on time, because there was a midterm election going to with other ballots, and the mail was probably loaded up with other ballots. But at any rate, that was a suggestion that if you're going to mail it, please do it by the 25th to try to get it here on time. And it wasn't a cutoff. It was just a suggestion because Unilect knew that they had to wait till the end of the day, Friday, to clean out their mailbox. I want to stress the fact that Nancy didn't touch a ballot one anywhere in the process of us cleaning out the ballot box here. She stood back and just watched, and Gail, right? Gail and I, or Joanne, I'm sorry, Joanne and I did all the handling. Actually, I did all the handling, and Joanne helped verify the count. The only big glitch was, and we, being only two people in the whole NNE committee that day, we didn't think that it would hurt for Nancy to hold the box. I was downstairs helping to get certification done, and was in front of everybody. So we just assumed that for her to hold the box would be all right. And then I was going to come up and get it. But at any rate, all these things are going to be scrutinized very well or clearly by your NNE committee. We'd like to get a couple more volunteers to help us. We're going to look at what we did right and look at what little issues arose and get some clarification. And I'd like to see the process start a little earlier than it did this year, but we did the best we could.
Thank you, Michael. All right. I think, well, we need a motion on the table. So make a motion that the board approve the certification of the 2022 AGM results.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. Linda?
So one of the things I was concerned about that people actually emailed me and messaged me about was the 76 ballots. One of the things that they quoted to me was in our bylaws, Article 2, Section 7D, it reads, all mail ballots must be received by the day prior to the election in order to be valid. The election this year, their cutoff date was November 3rd. In the past, Unilect has had a Friday cutoff date with AGM scheduled for a Saturday. I'm not certain the conversations that occurred or why they changed the cutoff date, but that should have been by our bylaws. Entities required to meet our bylaws. So I hope we take a real hard look at that again so that we're making sure that unless our bylaws change and we change our AGM date, it's always going to be a Friday cutoff. And if flying here and we still use Unilect is hard for them, I'm sure they have other people in the office that can clean out the ballot box that Friday if they have to leave earlier in order to accommodate us. They've always been very accommodating to see that we follow our governing documents with our elections. Thanks.
Michael? And Nancy?
Again, I want to reiterate, I don't know where the November 3rd came from. Unilect stayed at their office Friday until the end of the day after 4:30, got their ballots, and then went to the airport. And everything that came Saturday or Monday. And so I don't really know where the November 3rd was. I remember the October 25th. Please mail by that date, but I don't really think we had a November 3rd cutoff. Okay.
Yeah, Unilect requested the number. It's on. Okay. Unelect requested the November 3rd date because they could not get to the airport. They said in time to get a flight and get out and get into Bellingham before midnight. So I looked at the bylaws and we still had a cutoff on the 4th for the ballot drop box. And the committee voted. And we granted Unilect's request. So that's where it came from. If somehow it changed to something else, I didn't know about it at the time. Okay, and then I've got another comment. When I became a candidate for the board, I recused myself from vetting and vote counting process entirely. I did not touch candidate applications or candidate drawing order items, and all ballot envelopes were handled by the remaining NNE member and the general manager. However, that recusal was not enough for some people, and those members demanded I resign as chair by relinquishing the chairman's keys to the remaining NNE member, who would then become NNE chair. The NNE manual requires the chair keep the keys. If the chair relinquishes the keys, the chair has in fact resigned. So instead, I agreed to a joint key holding agreement brokered by the executive committee. The keys were put into a taped envelope signed by the general manager, myself, and the other NNE member, Michael. And the key envelope was stored in a safe. Whenever the ballot box was to be emptied, the general manager brought out the key envelope. All three of us observed it had not been tampered with, and the GM opened the ballot box. And I stood there and observed the ballot envelope count, signature confirmation, and date stamp procedure. Then all three key envelope signers agreed our ballot security procedure was secure. Now, during the AGM, I remained on the AGM floor while the other NNE committee member observed the ballot counting downstairs as is required. I was under the mistaken impression the floor vote had to be collected by a committee member, and the other committee member was not allowed to leave the ballot counting area. Unfortunately, a few members in the audience created a loud disturbance. The committee member observing the ballot counting ran up to the floor and opened the ballot box, and that really should not have happened. I did not have to collect those ballots on the floor. I had misread the manual. But, you know, that's the way it is. And every floor ballot got counted. So everyone should be perfectly happy. Then another ballot confusion occurred because a board candidate withdrew after the cutoff date to remove a name from a ballot. Under NNE rules, the committee could not remove the candidate's name or alter the ballot to show a withdrawal. Legal counsel advised that because a board candidate submitted a written request to withdraw and then sent that request to the board of directors, they could not serve on the board even if elected.
and that legal opinion was shared. Lastly, unfortunately, a larger than normal number of mailed-in ballots arrived late because they were mailed later than the widely publicized mail-by date. The late mail-in ballots can be attributed to a sustained Facebook campaign cautioning voters not to use the Sudden Valley ballot drop box and to mail in their ballots instead. Some members voting in the final week of the election took that bad advice and mailed in their ballots anyway. Their ballots arrived late and their votes were not counted. Fortunately, the vast majority of members voting in that final week did use the ballot drop box. Their votes were counted. The lesson here is don't believe everything you see on Facebook.
Any other discussion? Timing,
I'm just a little confused because.
use the microphone, please.
I'm a little confused because Michael said that those 76 ballots were not received until after the cutoff. Your statement said that you told Unilect you would accommodate them and use the November 3rd cutoff. So I'm a little confused at that. I'm also confused.
I don't understand your question, Tommy.
You said that the cutoff was going to be November 3rd. Like you said, they stayed in the office through the end of November 4th.
And you told that you,
But they did stay in the office.
I didn't know that until just now.
okay, and then when you talked about all the reasons why you were involved with the ballots and doing all the things, I mean, it does say, and Michael has, this is something that I looked at as well. Where is it? The role of a current entity committee member who becomes a candidate for the board or other SVCA elected position. Where is it? It says that you cannot be involved in even helping counting. That is in our bylaws. So I'm wondering how you justified going against the bylaws.
Not.
Yes, you
reading
did.
More.
You helped with
bylaws.
counting.
Look at what it exactly said.
Did you help with counting in any way? Did you
No.
have ballot? Did you
No.
have blank ballots and hand them? So I'm just, there's a lot of explaining and blaming Facebook, but I think perhaps we need as members of the board to not be above, to be above reproach. And I feel that you have a lot of justification for the way you handled things. And I think that, you could have trusted Michael, you've worked with him.
So first of all, I agree that members of the board should be above reproach. So remember that for later. That being said, it says she cannot participate in the counting or handle the ballots. She didn't handle the ballots. She held in her hand, according to someone, some blank ballots and handed them over. Blank ballots are counted ahead of time and then they are counted at the end, and they all have to be accounted for from beginning to end. That's part of the documentation. That's part of the certification. All of that being said, a point of order should have been brought up before the AGM closed if someone had concerns about that issue, so it could have been addressed at that point. This is not the time to do that. But the reality is that she did follow the bylaw based on what the instructions of the parliamentarian and our legal counsel, because we did depend heavily on both of them, not only prior to the meeting, but during the meeting. So the parliamentarian was present. He was aware of what was being said in the audience, and he did not say that we had any issues. He did mention that the ballot box should not have been opened once Michael came up. But the reality is it's on video. Everyone could see it. Nobody touched it. Nobody touched the ballots. And so it didn't harm, it's like no harm, no foul.
Any other discussion? Go ahead one more time.
We've been through this. In 2014, Leslie did exactly what I did. She was in any chair and she ran for the board. And I followed what she did at that time. She recused herself, and the words that were used in the minutes were she recused herself from vetting, from the vetting process entirely. I added and vote counting in there. Leslie remained chair throughout the AGM period of 2014, operating under the same bylaws that I have operated under. I read them really carefully, and I think we were both right.
Any other discussion? Michael?
I forgot all about the blank in-person ballots. And the reason that that happened was, again, there's two people on the N&E committee. The bylaws say that, yes, that if someone's running for the board, they're not allowed to touch ballots, but they were blank. And I went in, we had 10 in-person ballots out at the table for people to come in. And we could see that we had a line and that we were going to run out of them. So I quickly ran into the counting room and asked for some blank ballots. And Nancy was just as an observer, since no one came to be an observer. So she sat in the chair and observed. And we took back and forth. I had to go out and answer a bunch of questions as to why a guy couldn't turn in his ballot. And I mean, we tried, there was only so many people. I mean, when there's only two people, it's kind of really hard. And if she would have recused herself and stepped away, I would have been the only one. I was grateful for the help because you can't be in 3 spots at one time. But she took blank ballots, 25 of them, and handed them to Catherine. Catherine looked at each one before she gave it to a homeowner and could tell they were blank. And then at the end, they counted what they do, a ballot reconciliation. And every ballot was reconciled to the right spot of being either used or not used. And they did that 2 times to make sure that everything reconciled the count correctly. Yeah, some of it probably shouldn't have happened. Just like probably yesterday, we didn't have a quorum certify the election because there's only 2 of us out of the possible 5. And you know, that's all there is. So you got to work with what you got.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll call the question. The motion on the table was that the board approve the certification of the 2022 AGM. All those in favor? All right, that passes unanimously. Oh, wait, yeah. Brian, did you, sorry, that was loud. Brian, did you raise your hand for yes?
Yes. Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so yes, passes unanimously. All right, we'll move on to presentation of the 2022 snow plan. So I'll pass it over to Joanne.
Thank you. Joining me in presenting the snow plan is our maintenance superintendent, Mike Brock. I'd like to start by saying that snow removal is a very high priority for SVCA, and that the goal of snow removal is to clear the most significant roads, giving access to the majority of residents. This also ensures that emergency vehicles get access. Snow removal is very challenging because weather is unpredictable and can change quickly. This makes the appropriate snow removal tactics change based on the weather forecast and conditions. We all know that snow removal can be difficult or even dangerous given our steep roads. Lastly, snow removal is costly. It's important to keep the roads safe, but we don't want to overspend either. An important element of our snow removal plan is communication. Throughout a weather event, updates on conditions will be posted to suddenvalley.com in the announcements section. In an extended snow event, updates on conditions and plowing progress will be posted also to the homepage of the website, in addition to the announcements. And I'd like to note for the community that when we post something to the announcements section of the website, it automatically pushes to Facebook. So if you follow the Sudden Valley Facebook site, you'll get that alert through that channel as well. We'll be establishing a weather alert hotline that will make updates available to members who don't have internet access but still have phone service. When we post a weather alert to the website, we will also record that update as a phone message so that people can call the hotline and hear it. Lastly, in terms of communication, we will send e-blasts when a serious weather event is predicted, reminding people of the hotline number and all the different places that they can go to get that information. As a reminder to homeowners in the community about what they should do in severe weather, if you are having an emergency, please call 911. They're the folks who can help you immediately and with the most appropriate services. But if you become aware of an issue on the roads that Sudden Valley staff can address, please let us know. After hours, you should call security at 360-319-8200. Security has a roster of the manager who is on duty, and all the on-duty managers have lists of phone numbers, so they have immediate access to the personnel and third-party vendors that can help address issues like a downed tree or a particularly icy area or a stalled car, that sort of thing. During the business day, and that is Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, please call administration directly at 360-734-6430, the regular number. And we'll take that information you want to share with us, and we'll make sure it gets to the right people. The biggest issue, or one of the biggest issues that we encounter during snow removal is cars that are abandoned on the road. They have a serious impact on safety because people try to go around and then they end up also ditching it. It's not pretty when it starts to happen. So we have to get those cars towed as soon as possible. And of course, Sudden Valley does not have the capacity to tow a vehicle. So if you end up with your car stuck, you have to make your own arrangements for towing. Let us know if you can, so that we can potentially direct traffic around or clear behind you so the tow truck can get to you, but we can't tow vehicles. Also, as we look forward to severe weather coming our way, everyone should make preparations to clear their driveway, whether that's making sure your snow shovel is available at the front of the shed instead of the back, or making arrangements with a young and hardy neighbor to do that clearing for you. But do remember that plowing can affect your driveway entrance. So you might clear your driveway and then the plow goes by and suddenly you've got a ridge and you might have to go out again. So just keep that in mind. Might be better to wait till the plow comes through. One last thing, if you can't clear all the snow off your driveway, throwing ice melt on top of that snow might be a bad choice. because it could melt and then refreeze. So in those situations, you're probably better off having some plain sand on hand, just to add a traction layer to the top of the snow that's going to get compacted. I'm sure many of you, most of you have experience with dealing with snow in Sudden Valley, and you don't need me to remind you of how to do it. But it is always worth a reminder to get yourself prepared and make sure you have the supplies and the help that you need for that. With the nitty gritty of the snow removal plan, I'm going to let Mike handle that.
Thank you, John. As Joanne stated, our primary goal is to keep the roads clear and safe as possible. So our plan to do that is to start on the main roads first and our primary roads. And then after that, our secondary roads followed by the residential roads, and kind of follow that plan to get roads open for the most amount of people the quickest. Once we can maintain those primary roads to a good level, then we'll branch out into those other roads. If the residents don't know what their road is classified as that they live on, there's a map that's going to be posted to the website, and it clearly defines main roads, secondary roads, and residential roads. Monitoring staffing, I will be monitoring the weather continually throughout the winter, looking at forecast, trying to stay ahead of things. If there's an extended event coming, we have a plan put in place to work alternate shifts so that we provide more coverage outside of the normal business hours. Anti-icing and plowing and sanding, we've got a pretty good plan this year to be putting down anti-ice brine on the roadways. If you're not familiar with brine, it goes to the head of the snow event. So you spray it on. What it does is it binds to the road surface, and then it makes it much easier to plow the snow off. Snow will still stick to the road, so don't think just because we put brine down, we're not going to get a snow accumulation. But what it will do is help us to remove it quicker and get back to a clean road quicker. And those routes will be the same. We're going to start in the primary routes, move to secondary routes, and then the residential. Same with plowing and sanding. When the snow accumulates to a level that's beneficial to take a plow, that needs to be in that 1 to 3 inch range before you really, want to put a plow blade down and start moving it. At that point, we'll get crews out. We'll be doing plowing and sanding, and again on those main roads first and then secondary. We also have, as you know, in Sun Valley, many steep grades and steep windy roads. We have Elite Landscaping on contract to help with those roads with a UTV, and he is also equipped with brine and a snowplow. Equipment, we have 5 trucks that we're able to equip with sanders and plows. My plan is to have 2 of those trucks ready to roll at all times with a sander and plow on them. We do a lot of maintenance activities here, and we need to use our vehicles for other purposes. So those other sanders and plows will be staged, and we can have them ready to go in a few hours. But I want to have at least 2 ready to go all the time, so that if an unexpected event hits or we need to get some sand down fast somewhere, that we're ready to go. Materials, based on historical averages, I looked at the last 5 years and took an average of what we were using those years, and I'm confident that we're in good shape going into the season. As we get into the season and what the weather does, we may need to, bring in more sand and salt and supplies. But I've talked to vendors, got good communication with them, so we can get those supplies in if needed. The brine we're sourcing locally, so that's going to be a huge benefit. We have 24-hour access to it, so that's something when we can just get when we need it. Have any questions?
Yes, in the past few years, I've been noticing the buildup at the mailboxes, which has probably always been a continual thing. But in the past few years, I was actually over at our box, busting ice and clearing it, de-icing and keeping to where we can get in and out of there. And when I hadn't done that before I got started, of course, cars packed the snow into ice rapidly in those little parking lots there for our mailboxes, which should be treated like special ground, because nowadays with the Amazon shipping, everybody's getting more through the mail and wanting access to those. It's like, so we should start focusing on keeping those clear, de-ice, so that we don't have slips and falls and slides into mailboxes. And in that same breath, to keep that cleared enough so people that believe it's okay to park and live there, because all of a sudden there's a lot of extra snow there and they can't get their car out. It's like, even if we were to go around with blowers and blow off their car, so we can get them to move those cars, because they're blocking the way. Plus they're blocking the roads at those places for the snow plows. So I have concerns about clearing those areas just because of the expanded mail service that everybody's, having more packages delivered. And so I'd like to see some focus with that. And even if the little guys can run by there and scrape out of there, but we can use some de-icing and those things. And as I busted ice on them, and I actually by myself, old guy style, could clear it. And it's possible to do. And if we have anybody on staff that's maybe not working, because there's probably a little bit golf activity is not happening. So it's hard to find the white ball in it. So anyways, it's like, yeah, I'd like to see some more focus on all of our mailboxes and convince all of our residents. That's why I'm getting on here tonight, instead of just talking to Mike about it, is to stress that the value of these mailbox drops to our community, especially around Christmas, in the holidays, and the nasty weather. It's like, some of those big trucks, they make their way out here with stuff that people may not necessarily be able to go to town with their car and get. So making some little effort by all residents, if you've got young drivers, make sure they understand that if their car can't handle it, tell them to park it, not in the road, because everybody parks out of the road the rest of the year. So this is not the time to all of a sudden think it's okay to leave cars blocking roads, because I've seen it on our side streets where the big boys plows could run down through there, but everybody's cars just keep inching farther out. And then all of a sudden we can't run a plow that would easily knock it out in one sweep, but then it's all blocked. And so it's up to all of us to pitch in on that. And like Joanne said, keep your driveway cleared so you don't end up in the hospital with a broken hip. I've had neighbors get flipped over with rubber boots and broke ankles there. For some reason, there were certain boots that would do that. In the meantime, it matters. I don't want to see anybody injured and showing up in emergency rooms, and please take care of all of our mail delivery.
Thank you for bringing that up, Sam. Actually, as part of our plan, we have separate maps that we'll be putting into the vehicles. And as part of those maps, mailbox areas are listed as a primary route. So as we're doing those primary routes, we both anti-icing and plowing those areas. And as our equipment, you mentioned the little UTV guys, they also have a Yanmar tractor this year. It's equipped with a plow and a brine sprayer. So we can get into those areas with that, as well as like the welcome center on the clubhouse, and try to keep these working areas a little more clean.
Thank you. Sounds good.
That's the new tractor?
Yes.
Go ahead, Linda.
So I was going to say a couple of things. I love the map, but it's hard to read. If you could just post a list of the primary and the secondary roads, because people will always say, I live on, and when am I going to get plowed? At least if you did that simplified list, you could say, if you don't see your name on this, your name of your street on this list, it's considered residential. And also gravel. I don't know how many gravel roads we have it here. I know a member recently spoke about that, but anyway, the last thing I wanted to say, there are still tons of leaves up on the Gate 5 roads. And if you put brine down, it's going to go on top of the leaves. I don't know if there is a plan on getting the roads cleaned before that goes down. And last thing that Sam brought up is we have emergency parking maps, and I think those should be as much and designated areas. That should be part of your snow plan and part of something that needs to get published. That's all I got.
We do have a plan to take care of the leaves. We were waiting for them all to come down rather than going out and doing it once and then it blows and then you're doing it again. So we do have a plan for that.
Just hope it doesn't snow again.
Hold on one sec. No, it's,
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you guys very much. Keith McLean here, ACC Chair. Hey, Sam, you guys are talking about the snow plan here. I've noticed driving around here, a lot of people are starting to put like boulders and things out on the corners to prevent people from parking or whatever during the winter. And my concern was not necessarily about that, but more about snow plowing and the blades hitting those, you know what I mean? Trying to cut the corner or whatnot, and then hitting those stones. And I didn't know if there's a letter or something we might be able to send out to just letting people be aware that snowplow needs to be able to get a route, you know? So that was it.
any other discussion?
I wanted to acknowledge, Linda, that I made note of your request, and I'll go ahead and post a list of the names of the roads so people don't have to pore over the maps. That's a great call out because I find it hard to read it.
And rather than do all of them, if you just do the main and secondary roads and just say, if you don't see the name of your road here, you're residential.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. Thank you, Mike and Joanne, for presenting that. The next item on the agenda is a recommendation to revise the org structure, and I'll pass it over to Joanne.
Thanks. Our current organizational structure employs layering, which is to have a lot of duplication of responsibilities between different individuals or positions. This approach ensures that you always have strong, clear leadership present for the association, but it also leads to duplication of responsibility, which in some instances can erode accountability. Duplication or redundancy, of course, can be a good thing, but it is costly. And I believe that SVCA would be better served by a more distributed model in which each manager has distinct responsibilities, while the GM has both responsibility for oversight of departments as well as retaining responsibility for a unique set of responsibilities for that GM role. I propose to replace the operations manager role that was recently defined with a chief of staff. This title has become more broadly used in industry in recent years and encompasses a range of flexibility across responsibilities, experience, and qualifications. For SVCA, I propose that this chief of staff role have oversight of administration and member services and report to the general manager. Primary responsibilities for the role would include administrative services, which includes administrative support of the board of directors, committees, and general manager, maintenance of documents and records, tracking the receipt and response of member requests and complaints, facility rentals, and the ordering of supplies for the administration and member services groups. This role would also have responsibility for communications, including facilitating and documenting communications to and from the board of directors, staff, and community members, maintenance of suddenvalley.com, preparation and deployment of e-blasts, submission of content for the views, and serve as a point of contact for external agencies in an emergency situation, which was previously identified as a PIO. Event planning, including official association events such as AGM and events that are much more fun, such as trunk or treat and breakfast with Santa. So my recommendation is that the board of directors approve this proposed change to the organizational structure of the SVCA and direct me, Joanne Jensen, to work with the executive team to finalize a job description for the position of chief of staff and initiate a search for candidates.
All right. Make a motion to start. I move that the board of directors approve the proposed change to the organizational structure of the SVCA and direct Joanne Jensen, the general manager, to work with the executive team to finalize the job description for the position of chief of staff and initiate a search for candidates. Do I have a second? That's seconded by Sam. Any discussion? Sonia, then Linda.
So when it talks about single point of contact for external agencies, can you clarify what that actually means?
I found in the few months that I've been here that sometimes calls come in from agencies and they get misrouted. For example, we can have a Lake Wacom Water and Sewer call with an administrative or contractual question and get routed to maintenance. And my inclusion of that here is not to imply that the chief of staff would direct the relationships with those organizations or make any obligations for the association, but simply be another person that could reliably be routing calls to the right person. So it's more pragmatic than strategic.
Linda.
Okay, I had just a couple of questions. Can you explain what you mean by maintenance of documents and records? Because that's partly the job of the secretary of the board.
Yes. There are quite a few documents that are managed by the association in preparation and in support of the board. While it's certainly a responsibility of the secretary, there's a huge volume of historical records that need to be maintained, and there needs to be a systematic structure in place to reliably store those records. So I'm not suggesting that we will say what needs to be stored. We will provide the mechanism by which it is stored reliably and maintain that system, so that if documents need to be retrieved or printed or queried, that we have a system that's reliable and efficient, so we can satisfy document requests more rapidly. Also, that we format documents consistently, that sort of thing.
I guess the only other thing I'd like to request of the board or of staff is if we could get a copy of the existing ops manager SOP that you're basically, I'm assuming, are going to work from. And that before this is implemented and there's a call put out to work, to post that you would bring that completed work that you do with the execs back to the board for the board to look at it and approve it.
So I'd like to amend the motion just primarily because I understand the urgency of why Joanne's trying to get this going pretty quickly. She needs that second in command. So can we amend the motion that once the job description is written, that the board can approve it via email? As long as we have a unanimous approval, we can do that via email. So I'd like to amend the original motion to accept for the board to approve the rewritten job description for chief of staff via board email, provided it's a unanimous vote of the board.
Second that. Any discussion on that? Anybody having any concerns with that? Michael, go ahead.
I just have two thoughts. One, you have a general manager. I think the board has enough to do. And I think those roles should be kept separate. The board doing its job and the office managing be done by the general manager. And second, I would like to suggest or ask, could candidates for this job, if they're a resident, be given first priority.
Any other discussion on the motion, amended motion? Nancy?
I'd actually prefer to have the best qualified candidate, resident or not. I don't even care if they're Canadian. That was supposed to be a joke.
All right, any other discussion on the amended motion? All right, I believe the motion, if it passes unanimously, we would approve the job description via email. All those in favor? All right, Brian voted yes on Zoom, so that passes unanimously. So Joanne will share that back with the board once it's prepared. Moving on to the next item on the agenda is a request for approval, member comment guidelines. I'll pass it over to Joanne for this.
The purpose of this request is to request approval of a process for managing member comments during board meetings. It's been the practice for meetings of the Board of Directors to include a scheduled time for member comments. This has been an important forum for members to speak directly to the board regarding issues of importance to them. The agenda asks that each member limit their comments to 3 minutes in length, and it indicates that a total of 15 minutes is allotted to this activity. No other rules have been approved to govern the nature of comments. In general, members do observe the time limits imposed on the comments section of the meeting agenda. Unfortunately, comments sometimes include personal remarks of a derogatory nature and other disruptive content. To ensure that meetings aren't disrupted by inappropriate remarks, simple guidelines have been drafted to guide members who wish to comment. The proposed guidelines are attached to the memo. The guidelines are taken from a similar document that's used by the city of Bellingham for council meetings where residents are also allowed to comment. And the guidelines are proposed as follows, that the member comment period is provided at the discretion of the Board of Directors. Members may indicate their request to make a comment in one of two ways: when attending an in-person meeting by lining up at the side of the room beside the podium, and then when attending a virtual meeting by selecting the raise hand icon in Zoom. During that member comment period, each speaker would be, still allowed 3 minutes unless that time is extended by the presiding officer, who is usually our president. And that member comment period may still be limited to 15 minutes. All remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole, and we ask that members refrain from comment or behavior that includes disorderly speech or action, name calling or personal attacks, obscene or indecent remarks, and derogatory comments on personalities. We also ask that members refrain from commenting on that includes advertising or promoting the sale of products or services or private enterprise, that they don't promote any contest or lottery, nor do they promote candidates for office. Any member who engages in speech or action as described in section 5, sorry about that, when such speech or action disrupts, disturbs, or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of a board meeting, may at the discretion of the president be asked to leave that meeting. In addition to the limits specified above, the president of the Board of Directors may set other reasonable viewpoint neutral limits to prevent the disruption of board business. Those are the proposed comments or proposed guidelines on comments. I make the request that the Board of Directors approve the proposed guidelines for comments.
All right, put a motion on the table, the move that the board of directors approve the proposed guidelines for member comments. Linda seconds that. Any discussion? Sonia, then Linda.
And I don't really have any discussion. I actually just want to apologize because I violated that during one of the owner comments where someone was asking who was running for the board. And I kind of promoted who I would have preferred. And I apologize for that. I knew as soon as it came out of my mouth, I shouldn't have done it, but it was a little, I was like, okay, maybe nobody noticed I did that, but I agree with this. I think it's a good policy to do that. And from what I understand, this doesn't preempt people if we're talking about ballot measures and that type of thing to come up and discuss if they're for or against those measures. Correct, Joanne?
Absolutely. The guidelines would just ask that people refrain from making personal attacks or comments. We can still all share our thoughts and opinions on whether something is good or bad. And we can disagree, but these guidelines encourage us not to make it a personal thing. Rather, it's centered on the issue or the action that's being discussed.
Linda?
Just a couple of comments. The first one where it says that this is just provided at the discretion of the board of directors. I think in that we are quasi, how do I say it? Governmental agency, we're almost required to allow our members time to speak. And that, yes, you can set time limits, that sort of thing. I'm curious why this year we started out with 2 member comment sections. We're now down to 1, but that's a separate issue. In number 2, Joanne, we should also say that they need to provide their name and address or division and lot. That should be part of that process. And I guess there's some, in number 4, there's times when I've called in as a member that there have been things that have been mentioned by Joanne or by maybe PNW or even something in the financials that really Joel can ask. And I've often specified to whom I had the questions. I think we should still be able to do that. And if Joanne is at a meeting and has something on the agenda, if there's financials on there, I think that we should be able to say that when it comes time to do that in their section of the agenda, if they could please address the question. I think they're the best people to answer these questions rather than the board of directors. And that's about all I have.
Timey? Any other discussion after Timey? Keith and then Stu?
The only thing I think we should add is, I know that sometimes member comments get off topic and can sometimes get personal, but so do board comments. And I think that we should include the board in this as well, that members and board members should refrain from comment or behavior that involves those things. I just think that should be included because if we expect our members to be respectful and to follow these rules, we have to too.
Go ahead, Keith.
You're gonna have to pass.
Nancy, do you want to pass this to Keith, please?
Yeah, that's all right. I'll lean over. Hey, my only comment was excuse me if I'm too loud, was us leaving, put a limit at 5 people. I know if there's some topics or whatnot that might be really interesting, there might be more than 5 people that would want to talk. And that's all I had to say. I was just curious about that.
It is a little heavy. First, it's great that you put this together, Joanne. I appreciate it. I think all meetings should be conducted in a respectful manner from both sides, from the community as well as the board. So I agree with Timey and what her request is as well. My really only kind of concern is that we're not violating First Amendment rights of the community or the board. And if we could see the documents that you originally drafted this from, that would be great. And since we don't have another board meeting for another month, perhaps we could maybe table this and give everybody a chance to review it before we take a vote on it.
I think too, in regard to the, adding board members in, I think that we would probably should draft a separate policy that discusses like board member responses to member comments or something along those lines and address both of them. I do have a plan to bring a package of policies forward to try to address some of that. And I'm hoping to have that and work with Joanne to get that prepared for the December board meeting. And I think I can try to add something along those lines, that type of policy. And then we'll probably have to spend, it'll be like a large policy manual essentially. And so there'll be probably a significant amount of discussion that we'll have to have as a board on that and help set a lot of the process and put rules in place for how we do all sorts of various different things from agendas to those different types of things and other policies that we need to have in place, like conflict of interest policies, things like that, that are generally policies that boards have. So I have no problem, gathering that additional information and then bringing everything back at the next meeting too. Sam?
Yeah, I agree. We can get a little more info and continue this discussion. And I would like to say something about members shall refrain. We're all members. Dues paying member, got to be that way to be on the board. So actually, I'm the same as everybody out there. So is everybody up here. We're all the same. We're all neighbors, but we are all included as members. So that includes, this list is for all of us. So I think it's quite clear. We don't need to separate it out because I'm not special as a board member. I'm a member out here and I don't get anything special out of this. Besides, I'm a member and I'm expected to treat everybody the same as they should treat me. Thank you.
Michael?
I agree with Stu. It'd be nice if we kind of tabled this and got it put together with more of a package, see where it came from. And I don't see anything here about, it's got member comments, but I don't see anything about the board replying to those comments. I had heard a board meeting where somebody said, we don't have to answer your questions. And it'd be nice if they had, if we got a response, the members did get a response.
So actually, this is a board meeting. And so members are invited in by the board if we choose for them to participate during member comment. We're not obligated by law at all to even do that. We do it during the regular board meetings, and during the special meetings, we don't. That was based on board orientation from the attorney who said, first of all, why are you doing 2 owner comment periods? That's a mistake. Secondly, the board doesn't need to be responding during those comments unless it is something that is important that needs to be cleared up, like what Linda was saying. There are some times that it makes sense for the board to respond, but most of the time it's an opportunity for a community member to put their perspective forward, and it's something that we allow. But we were, it's generally on a special meeting because that's an extra meeting for us, and we're all volunteers anyway. We try to keep those meetings short and to the point of those agendas, but basically we are not required to do it. It's something that it's been done for many years here, and that we do it as a matter of practice because it's basically the right thing to do. to allow members to comment, but I just want to be real clear that we aren't obligated to do this. This is a meeting of the board.
All right, any other discussion? Are there any objections to tabling it until the next meeting? All right, hearing no objections, we'll table that. And we'll put together some additional information to go with that too. All right, the next item on the agenda is a request for approval and update to policy number 2016-12. And there's a copy of the revised policy in the agenda packet.
The purpose of this policy change is to more closely align SVCA's check signing authority as described in bylaw Article 4, Section 7B, which states that all checks shall require 2 officer signatures. Policy 2022 will rescind and replace SVCA's current policy 2016.12, which allows for the board to designate check signing authority to the managing director or general manager. Policy 2022 will instead only allow the board to designating a managing agent, such as the GM, to execute specified instruments such as agreements, contracts, deeds, etc., but not to allow for designated check signing authority outside of the executive officer positions. This policy also allows for the board to designate primary company administration of bank accounts to the finance director without check signing authority being placed in that same position. Policy 2016.12 did not apply to capital checks since those have always required 2 executive signers. And the practice as described in this amended policy actually describes what we have been doing for some time anyway. As 2 executives have signed virtually every check since Joe Akla, former general manager, left the organization. And that's the reason for changing this around.
I'll put a motion on the table that the board of directors approve the revision to policy number 2016-12 titled Board Designation of Executing Instruments and Administration of Primary Bank Accounts. Seconded by Sonia. Any discussion? Linda?
So I actually went back and looked at the 2016 copy of this document. And it's like the 2022's missing something here. I don't know when we made the account, I'm assuming we're talking about the accounting manager. I don't know when he was ever, or when this finance director position came about. Directors are elected. We're all sitting here as directors. The other thing is it only says, whereas the SVCA board can, it should be may, not can, designate by resolution a managing agent with the exception of check signing authority to execute such instruments. It goes, be it also, there's a sentence in there that was in the 2016. It said, be it resolved that the general manager specifying that individual has the authority to sign operating expense checks. Therefore, checks issued for operating expenses can have their signature. Now, if you want her to also sign leases, deeds, that sort of thing, I think that they're only after contracts, deeds, leases go through the board process of approving those instruments. Should she be allowed to sign them, and it still should require at least 1 officer of the association.
Sonia?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Yeah, we actually did approve Joel to receive the title of finance director. He has taken on additional duties. over the last year. And so he received that, oh gosh, I don't know, it's probably been 10 months since he's been using that title. So this accurately reflects what his title is on his job description, and everything. Regarding, so what you're reading, the first part comes directly from the bylaws. But as you were talking about, apparently the way the original was written, so as what Joanne was saying, is that this accurately reflects the fact that the bylaws only allow 2 officers to sign checks. And because the way it was written is it was allowing the general manager to actually have signing authority on all of the bank accounts. And even though it went on to say, but they don't have the ability to sign anything but operational checks, the reality is if you give them signing authority on all of our accounts, they have signing authority on all of the accounts. There's no way to restrict that. So, and not only that, it violates the bylaws. The bylaw under the treasurer says that only 2 officers can sign checks, no one else. We can't designate that duty to anyone else. So so that explains that. If you want to amend it to add that, can she amend this to add that it should be 2 signatures on contracts? Yeah, I'm good with that too.
In the far past, it's always been 2 signatures. I know sometimes, AJ, in the past, when you've only had 1 signature on big contracts and stuff, I've reminded you that you're required to have 2.
What exactly change are you proposing then to it? Just to be clear.
So you don't want the general manager to be able to sign checks. You want that authority to remain with 2 board officers, correct? I'm just saying, whereas the SVCA board can designate a managing agent to execute such instruments, it would almost say designate the general manager rather than just a managing agent to execute such instruments once approved by the board, and to include at least another officer signing. I don't know how to put that really clear. Just there should be 2 signatures, not just 1.
Yeah, but it allows us to designate someone to sign it.
But just
Either
1, not 2.
Either 2 signatures, or the board needs to designate someone to have the authority to sign the agreement, is the way I read article.
That's the way that reads now. I still think.
That's from the bylaws, though. The first whereas statement is straight
I
out of the
see what you-
bylaws. So if you're wanting to change that, you're proposing a bylaw amendment essentially.
That makes me nervous.
Because we have a contracting policy too,
That's usually for.
which
that's for
outlines,
Operational contracts, I have no trouble with that. If she wants to hire Elite for the winter to do some of our plowing, I have no issues with that. When we're talking about leases, we have El Agave, we have the church, we have CTK. We have some really large contracts. One that you recently approved to go into with the county for all that road work out here on all the main drag up here. But it's that sort of thing that I think still needs to reside with the board and with the execs. And once discussions taken place, it should be 2 officers. I know that she can sign any, operational contract under a certain amount of money. That's not an
Yeah.
issue, and you can direct her like you did with.
But she can't just sign these agreements. She has to get board resolution of the board, which
Yeah, but
is a
that
vote
doesn't-
of the
but see,
board.
And that's the problem. It doesn't say that in here too, and that's why I would feel better having still two
The last sentence in the first whereas is as may be designated by resolution of the board. Which,
This is the resolution that says, whereas the board can designate to execute these instruments. So this is what you, so this is giving her that permission. And that's why I'm saying it makes me nervous.
okay, I think I understand what you're saying now.
Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Stu, sorry. I get used to this, looking around the table. So
Hiding down here at the end of the table. So just to summarize, so everything's clear and we just received this yesterday. So check signing authority resides with the executive committee, which is essentially AJ and Sonia, right? Or any of the executive committee. Any of the executive committee, okay? And there has to be 2 signatures. And the general manager is not going to have signing authority then. They don't have it anyway. Okay. I find that a little interesting because that's different than how corporations actually do it. Usually the general manager or the CEO or president actually does have signing authority on checks because it makes it more efficient to do business that way. But I understand this is an HOA and things are a little different, so.
Our bylaws actually make
Yeah,
me
the
the
bylaws.
CEO,
Yeah.
I guess, which is a
Um,
little weird.
Then the other question I have is you have this in here, the finance director will be the primary company administrator without check signing authority on all bank accounts. What do you mean by that? Do they have the authority to open additional bank accounts or just?
Transfer money.
He does transfer money.
Sure.
So basically, right now, Joel, as our finance director, this really doesn't change anything. He's the person that manages the bank accounts. As it is, he doesn't have the ability to do anything at all other than unless we have by resolution or vote have told him to do something. He can't open an account, he can't close account, he can't transfer any funds. And as a matter of fact, like we just completed the audit, one of the things that the auditors look for is like if there's a large sum of money that was moved, he has to show them the board resolution or the board vote that allowed him to do that. He's not able to do any of that. But it does allow him to be the one that, you know, so that we don't actually have the ability to go in there and do anything with the bank accounts. We're just signing checks that have already been approved, you know, through various things. So it just gives the finance director the authority he actually already has to operate the day-to-day business of the association. But he is limited with being able, you know, to your concern, he can't do that unless the board as a whole authorizes for him to actually move any large sums of money or actually any monies from one account to another. That requires a board decision to do that. And I think you heard me, but I don't necessarily disagree with you. You know, it would be awesome if the general manager could be one of the signers on the checks. It's our bylaws. And so it's going to require bylaw change. And that's something we should probably talk about this year and consider, you know, like those types of changes. So I don't disagree. It's just that's where we are. Hands are kind of tied on that right now.
No, I understand. Thanks for clarifying that, Sonia. I think it would be good to try to, not to put more on Joanne, but I think it'd be good to try to expand the authority of the general manager to where it functions. I mean, this is a pretty big size organization with a lot of money under management, and typically a manager or a CEO would have more authority than what Joanna is currently given. And I could see expanding that if we were open to discussing that.
We can definitely make note and try and schedule some time to have that conversation in the future. I do want to address one of the things that you brought up, Linda, being that we're resolving that Joanne would be able to sign these instruments. We actually aren't. The only thing that is resolved in this resolution is that the finance director is a primary company administrator. The whereas statements are not resolutions. They're just the information provided that out of our bylaws that give the background and the authority to make the resolution. It would have to be resolved that the general manager has the authority to sign those instruments.
So you're leaving that distinction out of there, and you're just saying that that it can by resolution, the board could give her the authority to execute an instrument, correct? Because it
Yeah.
still says by resolution, a managing agent, which isn't the managing agent, which would be her. But you're saying that it has to go through that process. Okay.
Yeah, and so this resolution, the managing agent actually is the finance director, being a primary administrator on the accounts without signing authority. Is the way that reads. And so in the future, and this is how I've always handled it, is that the board can make the motion that says the board authorizes the general manager, Joanne Jensen, to execute X agreement on behalf of Sudden Valley or on behalf of the board or whatever. And then that is a resolution, technically a motion of the board is, or, it could always be drafted up in a formal version like this policy is too, if it rose to that level.
And if we wanted 2 signatures, you simply could say that it would still require 2 signatures, one officer and the general manager.
Yeah.
Works for me.
One thing that I've learned is nobody ever gives you a damn contract with 2 signatures. You're just always going back to these people being like, we need 2 signature lines. And yeah, usually it's like, with the county council and stuff, they always designate the executive to sign everything, basically. They designate that authority over each time.
And maybe that's a change in the bylaws.
Yeah, and we can designate that, and we do have it designated in that contracting policy for operating contracts. And it also talks about capital contracts too, saying that they need board approval, I believe. And then that's like up to, but those are all things that, we're basically, I'm hoping to start in December, a comprehensive review of all of our policies, basically. And work with Joanne on revamping all of that.
Need to make.
So. Is there any further discussion on this? All right, well, I'll call the question. Then the motion on the table was to approve, let's see, approve the, wow, I just dropped mental brain fart, sorry. Yeah, approve the revisions to update policy 2016-12 titled Board Designation of Executing Instruments in the Administration of Primary Bank Accounts.
Superseded.
Yeah, so we're just updating it, I think, and we're part of the policy discussion in the future will be making these things all look the same. So all of our policies look wildly different all over the place. So standardizing that a bit will help. Sorry. So yeah, just read the motion. So all those in favor? All right,
Aye.
Brian voted yes on mine. That passes unanimously. All right, so the last item on the agenda is for new business is scheduling board orientation. So were you, Joanne, able to get any resolution on?
I've not heard back from.
Okay, I know Richard said he was going out of the country. Yes,
Yeah.
like yesterday, so.
So there are 2 Thursday evenings available from the parliamentarian. December, they would be the.
Actually,
We have not received availability of our lawyer who typically attends the board orientation in order to give his perspective and information regarding being a board director, et cetera. Another attendee to the orientation and participant is our parliamentarian, John Berg. The goal would be to identify a second Thursday in the month of December at which we could gather as a board for that orientation. And the parliamentarian has indicated that he is available on the first and or the third Thursday in December. And although I have yet to confirm with the lawyers that they would be available, we would want to ask in this session tonight if that would work out for the majority of the board members.
Are we open for am I seconding it or are we discussing it? What are we doing? Okay, Joanne, is there a reason that, is it possible we could do it on a Saturday? Like a Saturday, this will run long. So just the attorney portion of the board orientation took a whole evening for us, so we're talking about doing the parliamentarian and the insurance and the attorney. Is it possible maybe? And also the third Thursday is the 21st. So I think we're getting too close to the holiday. Yeah. So I don't know. It's just a suggestion.
I wanted input regarding what would be an appropriate timing, since we are at the time of year when so many different activities are being scheduled. It's hard to schedule for a large group of this nature.
We're gonna do it Zoom or in person, since it's just a meeting. It's not really how do I say it? It's like a private meeting of the board because of orientation, and normally ACC and any new N&E person gets to come, so they've kind of got some background of how we operate.
I guess it'd probably be good to focus on like a date right now, try and hammer down.
After the first of the year.
Like, I think Joanne was hoping to get it done in December. We could always push it out into January as well, if the board wants to do that. I have no issues on either a Saturday or, in evening session. Yeah, that can be a bit tiring. But yeah, we just have to be more diligent with our time in the evening.
Okay, so another suggestion, because I'm looking at the calendar now and our board meeting is scheduled for the second Thursday in December, which is the 8th. So a week before that is the 1st and a week after that is the 15th. So we're not quite nudging into the week that sort of a more holiday week. So the 1st or the 15th in the evening would be options. It is a longer commitment. It's like 4 hours, right? Minimally. Okay, so the suggestion is to use the Thursday time, either the 1st or the 15th, to meet just with the parliamentarian, and then to schedule an additional session on a Saturday to do the legal orientation.
So normally when we've done board orientation, we all get our new binders. I've got my 2020 binder. But normally those get put together and it's like when you sit down for the meeting, you all have your binders and you have some general information that has to do basically with the organization, the budget for the current year, that sort of thing. Usually the attorney actually has a PowerPoint that gets put in there so that we have a paper copy of the comments that he speaks to. So it's just, I don't know what sort of staffing you have that you'd be ready to have that ready for all of us.
A digital orientation packet has already been prepared, so it's just printing it out if you want it in paper.
Yeah, I got this binder when I got on N&E, so that would have been 2 years ago. Everything in here is from 2018. So I'm hoping that what we get is going to be like pretty a lot closer. I mean, all the
Current
paperwork.
documents that are included in there are all posted on the website and they're up to date if they have been updated. If a document hasn't been amended since some year in the past, that's the most current version we have of it. So putting all those items into a binder is certainly something that we can do to make it more convenient for reference, but those documents are readily available to every community member right now.
Okay.
Of course, with the exception of what Linda noted as the presentation from the lawyer or any information that might come from the parliamentarian, right, the insurance stuff. But all the documents of reference are on the website and they're kept up to date there.
I just wanted to say real quick, I can appreciate the documents being on the website, but like for the ACC, a lot of time I take the binder with me. And when I'm out on properties and whatnot, I have to open it up and go through it there. And, you know, a lot of places we don't have internet connection and stuff. And to be honest, I'm not great on the computer. So the binder is really important to me, that it's updated, you know, and kept updated and stuff. That was it. Thank you.
And just to be clear, and this is something obviously we could have as a policy, but typically, since we've been doing so much Zoom, we've operated under providing digital copies of stuff. And if you want something printed, then you can email Joanne and she can work to have something printed off, you know, so we can definitely print, you know, copies of whatever to put stuff together for people who want it in that fashion.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if something new came out that I would be unaware of, it'd be great. You know, I get what you're saying, and that's cool that people can print that stuff up, but just that we're aware if something changed, you know, that we're aware of it, and then we can get a copy made then or something and add to our binder would be kind of cool. Just to keep it up to date and fresh.
All right, so dates. We have the 1st and the 15th as a potential meeting with the parliamentarian, and he has confirmed those dates with us. Legal counsel will have to wait to be able to confirm a time for Richard once he gets back from his vacation.
Do we know what time for the parliamentarian on either of those dates?
Did you guys discuss the time at all?
Said evening.
We'd probably do it via Zoom with the parliamentarian too, because he travels from down south. I think he's south of Seattle even maybe. So that would probably be the easiest way to host that meeting. Do we want to plan for the 15th just to provide a little extra time to get everything put together, and that maybe we can even see if Richard can come that time too. Who knows? We can keep that open.
Yeah, the parliamentarian used to include certain things too in that board packet, and he may have certain things he'd like to have us have. The other thing I wanted to bring up is we waited until April this year to update the bylaws with the two changes. There were two very large amendments, and I'd like to really see us get that done so that we're not waiting all that time to make those amendments, because in theory, according to the bylaws, once they're approved by the membership, they go into effect.
I'll work with Joanne to get those
Thank you.
put together for the December meeting. Bylaws. Okay. 15th, do we want to do 6 instead of 7? So we're not. I think he said at the AGM, probably like an hour to 2, probably an hour and a half, I think is what he was saying. To kind of go over just some, parliamentary procedure.
I don't know. What are other people's, when do other people eat?
Yeah, and just kind of, conducting board meetings and, we can talk about like AGM too and some of the way we've done things and whether we can make things more efficient and streamline processes or anything like that. Does anybody have any objections to 6? Does that not work for anybody? The 15, December 15. All right, well, let's plan on 6 PM at December 15th, and then we can kind of try to keep scheduling something with the lawyer, and we can always try to schedule a meeting via email. All right, well, that's the end of new business. We have one last item, closed session. We'll go downstairs for that. Do I have a motion to move into closed session?
Motion to move into closed session.
All right, that was motion by Linda, seconded by Sam. All those in favor? All right.
Aye.
Passes. And we're gonna go downstairs to the multipurpose room. So,
Yeah, I heard that. That don't count. No, that's what it is. Well, that don't count. Yeah, we'll see about that.
Oh.
Oh,
Old phones.
hey, listen, I had a pinched nerve. I have had 2 episodes with it, and I don't get to see the neurologist until the middle of this month. But he's gonna tell me what they're gonna do to me.
Hey, what's up, man? I'm in the middle of a community meeting. Yeah, it's great. And so we changed time, we changed we changed before.
Plus I trip you first.
That's one.
Oh, it's nice and warm up here. And I don't think that thing made too much noise.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing.
I do, but I'm gonna wait. This is gonna just take a minute.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Whatever, we got enough people back, so.
It's still live.
Can I get a motion to move back into open session?
Motion to move back into closed session.
Open
Open session. Oh,
at 10:14. Second, all those in favor? Passes unanimously, no actions taken, or results closed session. Motion to adjourn. Seconded by Michael, all those in favor? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, get some sleep, right?
Oh, timey.
Generally, you turn the power off before taking it off.
Ryan on speaker, but I don't know. He actually, I told him to mute. Don't end them. I think she rolls them and puts them in a tube.